Caladog had chosen Sargot, but another army was already striking far beyond the Western Front. Crotor had left Zeonica beneath the banners of an emperor and marched north without revealing his destination. Just after sunrise, his army reached Epicrotea. The Northern Imperial city had received no warning. Lucon's main force was elsewhere, and the garrison believed the war remained far from its walls. Citizens woke to soldiers shouting through the streets as Western banners moved toward the battlements. Crotor had not come to surround Epicrotea. He intended to break it before help could arrive. The first warning came when the Western horn sounded beyond the walls. Epicrotea's garrison rushed from barracks and homes, fastening armor as they climbed toward the battlements. Officers shouted conflicting orders while civilians fled the streets below, searching for any building that might shelter them. Outside the city, Crotor's army was already advancing. Soldiers moved through the morning mist behind raised shields. Behind them, a battering ram rolled toward the gate, its iron head swinging between ranks of Western soldiers. The defenders loosed their first arrows before their lines were fully formed. Men fell as the Western army moved toward the city, but the advance never slowed. Crotor had chosen the hour carefully. The gates were closed, yet Epicrotea was still waking. Its soldiers had been given only minutes to prepare for an army that had marched through the night. The first ladders struck the walls. Western legionaries began climbing. At the gate below, the ram gathered momentum. Then the first impact shook the city. Each strike of the ram drove the battle deeper into Epicrotea. The outer gate groaned beneath the impact. Splinters tore free from the timber, while defenders above poured arrows and stones onto the men sheltering beneath the battlements. Along the walls, Western soldiers climbed into waiting blades. The first attackers were thrown back, but others immediately took their place. Shields locked across the ladders as the legionaries forced enough men onto the battlements to establish a foothold. Fighting spread along the wall. As the defenders turned to contain the breach above them, the outer gate finally collapsed. Western infantry surged through the opening and reached the second barrier before the city could reinforce it. Whatever defenders the city could muster waited on the other side, ready for whatever came through that gate. The inner doors burst apart, throwing shattered timber across the road. Crotor drew his sword. The Western army had entered Epicrotea. The streets of the city became a battlefield the moment the inner gate fell. The defenders crashed toward the open gate. They knew what would happen if the Western army broke through. The market square lay only a short distance beyond them, and once the attackers reached it, there would be room for their numbers to overwhelm the city. For several moments, the defenders held. Western soldiers pressed against the line, shields colliding as swords searched for openings between them. The confined passage turned the fight into a brutal struggle for every step. Men fell beneath the crush of bodies, and those behind them immediately filled the gaps. Along the battlements, the last northern defenders fought on. Western soldiers had already seized much of the wall, surrounding the remaining garrison as they made their final stand. The defenders fought desperately, but the numbers against them were overwhelming. Below them, the defenders gave a final push. For a moment, the Western advance stalled. Then another wave struck. The line buckled. A defender fell beneath 3 shields, and the men around him were forced backward. Another section collapsed moments later. The Westerners poured through the gaps, surrounding the remaining defenders from every side. What had been a defensive line became a desperate struggle simply to stay alive. Northern soldiers were cut down where they stood, while those still fighting were driven farther and farther into the city. The defenders fought on, but the numbers were impossible to overcome. More Western soldiers flooded through the gatehouse, forcing the survivors deeper into Epicrotea. The soldiers who had fought so desperately to hold the gatehouse began retreating toward the market square. But the Western army waited for Crotor's command. Emperor Crotor entered the city behind his men. He walked through the shattered gatehouse with his sword already drawn, while the second wave of his army gathered behind him. He stopped for only a moment. Ahead, Northern soldiers were retreating toward the market square, while Western legionaries awaited his next command. The battle had reached the heart of the city, and Crotor intended to make certain it never left his control. Crotor raised his sword. "Take the city." The order carried through the gatehouse. Hundreds of soldiers surged forward, and Crotor followed them into Epicrotea. The streets erupted as the two armies collided again. Northern soldiers who had escaped the gatehouse attempted to form another line in the market square, while men from the battlements continued flooding down into the streets to reinforce them. Crotor reached the front before the defenders could establish their position. He struck down the first man who reached him and pushed forward while his soldiers widened the opening around him. His presence changed the pace of the assault. The Westerners saw their emperor fighting at the front and pressed harder. The defenders saw the man who had destroyed Garios' army advancing through their city beneath an imperial crown. Resistance began to collapse. The northern troops had been driven from the gatehouse back into the market square. Those who attempted to regroup were surrounded before they could form another line. The last organized defenders abandoned the streets and retreated toward the keep. A soldier approached Crotor as the survivors disappeared behind its doors.
"What are your orders, my emperor?"
Crotor had not marched north merely to capture another city. He looked across the market square, where some of the wealthiest merchants in the Northern Empire kept their stores. "Sack it."
"All of it?"
"Every home, every storehouse, every vault beneath this city."
Crotor turned toward the keep.
"Not a single dinar leaves Epicrotea unaccounted for."
The order spread quickly. Western soldiers broke through locked doors and emptied businesses into the streets. Chests of coin were carried toward waiting wagons. Silver, cloth, and grain were gathered beneath armed guard, while officers recorded anything valuable enough to strengthen the Western treasury. Crotor had inherited an empire weakened by war, and fear alone would not pay the soldiers required to hold his throne. Epicrotea possessed the wealth Xionica needed. Crotor selected 20 men from the veterans surrounding him.
"The rest of you finish the city."
He nodded toward the keep.
"You are with me."
The last defenders of Epicrotea had nowhere left to retreat. They formed inside the keep's entrance, determined to make the Western Emperor pay for every room he took. Crotor led his 20 men through the doors. The first clash filled the hall with steel. Northern guards fought from behind pillars and narrow passages, using the keep itself to limit the attackers pressing toward them. Crotor refused to slow. His men forced their way through the entrance, while he cut into the center of the defense. One chamber fell, followed by another, until the surviving guards were driven into the great hall. Their final stand ended beneath the banners of Lucon. By the time Crotor returned to the streets, wagons filled with Epicrotea's wealth were already assembling beyond the broken gates. The Western army would not remain long enough to hold the city. Northern reinforcements would come as soon as word spread. Crotor ordered the column south. Epicrotea had been conquered, stripped, and abandoned before its ruler even knew it was under attack. News of Epicrotea reached Lucon before Crotor's army had cleared the northern roads. A messenger raced toward the Northern Imperial column and nearly fell while dismounting.
"My Emperor, the Western army struck Epicrotea before dawn."
Lucon raised his sword.
"The city?"
"Taken and sacked. Crotor emptied its vaults and marched south before reinforcements could arrive."
Anger swept across Lucon's face. He turned toward the soldiers waiting behind him.
To Epicrotea!
The Northern Army changed direction. Farther west, another force continued through the hills beneath Sturgeon banners. Ragnvard rode at its head, following the route Dirthert had given him. The Nords were gone, but the Grand Prince still possessed enough men to honor the secret pact Halfdar had exposed. Before nightfall, the walls of Karbansith appeared beyond the trees. Ragnvard ordered his army forward, while Lucon marched toward Epicrotea and Crotor carried its riches south. Another hidden alliance was preparing its next move.